Have you ever thought about a train that could actually go faster than a plane? I mean, it really sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, right? But believe it or not, this kind of technology is being developed right now, and it could totally upend the entire airline industry. So let's dive in and figure out how this thing actually works. Okay, just look at that number for a second. 1,000 kilometers per hour. That's the mind-boggling speed China is aiming for with its T-flight train. We're not just talking about a small upgrade here. This is a complete revolution in how we travel on the ground. And this right here really puts it all into perspective. Your average Boeing 737, the kind of plane millions of us fly on, cruises at about 850 kilometers per hour. This train isn't just designed to match that, it's designed to be faster, which, leads to the big question, how on earth is that even possible? To really get how they're pulling this off, we first have to understand what's stopping us from hitting these speeds already. It really just comes down to overcoming two huge fundamental laws of physics. Think about any vehicle, really. It's always in a fight with two invisible forces. First, you've got friction. That's the physical drag from the wheels grinding on the track. Then you've got air resistance, which is basically this giant wall of air that the train has to punch through every single second. If you want to get to these insane speeds, you can't just reduce these problems. You have to eliminate them completely. So let's tackle the first problem, friction. How do you beat it? Well, the answer is actually pretty brilliant and kind of simple. You just get rid of the wheels altogether. And the way they do that is with magnetic levitation, or maglev for short. By using super powerful magnets that repel each other, the train literally floats above the track. It's not touching anything, it's riding on a cushion of air. And just like that, poof, the entire problem of wheel friction is gone, vanished. Okay, so getting rid of friction is a huge win, but that's only half the story. You still have that massive, invisible wall of air pushing back against you. So how in the world do you solve that problem? Well, the solution here is even crazier. You build a massive, sealed tube that runs the entire length of the track, and then you suck almost all of the air out of it. Seriously, think of it like a giant vacuum cleaner hose. With almost no air inside to create drag, the train can just glide through this near vacuum with practically zero resistance. This whole concept is what people call a vac train or a hyperloop. This chart just lays it all out perfectly. Your traditional high-speed rail has to deal with both friction and air resistance, and that pretty much caps its speed. Now, maglev trains, they solve the friction problem, which gets us up to around 600 kilometers per hour. But when you combine that frictionless float of maglev with a vacuum tube that has almost no air resistance, that's when you unlock the door to these truly unbelievable speeds. But this is where the story gets really interesting. Because even after solving those two enormous problems, engineers slammed headfirst into another giant obstacle. A deafening, powerful, and honestly, a pretty dangerous side effect of going this fast inside a tube. For decades, this one single issue basically put the brakes on the whole idea of ultra-high-speed vac trains. You could have a frictionless path and an airless tube, but there was still this one last powerful force you had to figure out how to beat. They call it the tunnel boom. And let me tell you, this is not just some loud noise. We're talking about a concussive blast, a massive shockwave that the train itself creates. So what's actually going on here? Well, even in a near vacuum tube, there's still a tiny amount of air left. And when the train rockets into that tube at extreme speeds, it acts just like a piston in an engine cylinder. It slams into that leftover air, compressing it into a dense pocket. That pocket of air creates a shockwave that barrels down the tube and then erupts out the other end with a massive boom. It's powerful enough to disrupt the environment and even damage the tunnel itself. So, how did they finally crack this? The solution is just incredibly clever. The engineering team in China actually got their inspiration from a gun silencer. They designed and installed these special porous structures at the entrances to the tunnel. These materials let that compressed air bleed off and dissipate slowly instead of building up into a shockwave. It's genius. The boom is basically silenced before it could even form. With that final, huge engineering problem apparently solved, the road to 1,000 kilometers per hour is suddenly wide open. And this really brings the global race for the next generation of transportation into a much sharper focus. Now, this timeline tells a really fascinating story. You see, the Hyperloop dream, which got a huge boost from Elon Musk back in 2013, has really struggled to get off the ground in the West.
Hyperloop One, which was the frontrunner, actually shut down its operations at the end of 2023. But meanwhile, China's state-backed project has been making quiet, steady progress, and it all led up to a successful full system test in 2024.
So, why does any of this really matter? Well, for starters, a trip from Beijing to Shanghai could drop to under 2 hours. That's faster than flying, especially when you add in all the time you waste at the airport. It's also a much more sustainable option than short-haul flights. For China, this is all about linking its massive cities together. And for the rest of the world, it signals a huge shift in who's leading the way in the future of travel.
And that really brings us to the final massive question. As this technology goes from being a cool idea to a proven reality with stable tests and solved engineering problems, you really have to start wondering, are we actually watching the beginning of the end for the short-haul flight?